Live from a bunker in the heart of the Ozarks. A podcast that's never been camping, but we have talked about it. It's Sif Pop. Welcome to Sif Pop Weekly, streaming live most Fridays or available to download later in your podcast feed, unless, of course, you're a patron.
Patrons get perks!
Patrons get those perks. I'm your host, Aaron Dicer, and he's trying to steer the conversation to Exhibit again. It's Andrew Ormsby, ladies and gentlemen.
Every day and always, ahoy!
Each week we'll chat about movies, TV, and whatever else from the pop culture universe is on our minds. And please welcome our guest this week. He can rewrite existence and shatter timelines. It's John Paula, ladies and gentlemen.
Woo!
And you are muted, my friend. You are muted.
That's my fault. Because I did that. in a world of probabilities, I chose to screw up right away.
I just thought you were rewriting existence. That's all. I just thought...
good to be back, though. Thank you for having me on the show.
Of course, of course. We are excited. We've got Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania to chat about today. A new Marvel movie in the works. That's always a fun thing to chat about. And then we wanted to hit up Netflix and take a look at You People getting a little buzz over the last few weeks.
Who are you calling You People?
I think that is where the title comes from, John. That
Wait,
idea.
What do you mean, You People?
What do you mean, you people?
So we're going to talk about those movies, and we'll do some best ever challenge, best ever hyphenated movies, and of course we'll do some buried treasure at the end as well. Before we get into any of that, a couple of things I want to mention. I may mention it again later, but as always, we are so thankful for our Sif Pop members, but I wanted to let you guys know Andrew Ormsby has taken over the Sif Pop pre-show.
Mine, and you're never getting it back.
That's all right. Plenty of Stockholm syndrome. Plenty of Stockholm syndrome going around. I'm fine. So Andrew has taken that over. So our Sif Pop members who get to hear the members-only pre-show each week will get a chance to hear some fun things coming back, like Do We Care, Drunk Sif Pop, some things you may know from the show. Are going to be there for our members. So never a better time to support what goes on here at Patreon, patreon.com/SifPop. The other thing is, if you haven't gotten your picks in for Sposkers, I should say, you should do that. Just go to the website, sifpop.com, and click where it says Sposkers and make your picks, and then tune in live on Oscars night to see what goes on and what happens. John, we gotta get you down to Missouri some Oscars. Come hang out with us live. That'd be fun. You should head this way some year. It's not too far.
Maybe not this year. I have 4 weddings I'm already flying to this year, so my wallet's a bit tight. But next year, probably, yeah.
Don't add a funeral, despite what the movies might tell you.
I'm okay without that.
Do not add a funeral. All right, so we are going to continue to do our Sposkers, so we would love for you to join in. Again, let's just go to the website and click on where it says Sposkers. All right, no reason to dilly-dally around. Let's get into the minutia, the tiny details, if you will. Let's get microscopic on a movie as we talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. superhero duo Scott Lang and Hope Van Dyne, together with Hope's parents Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne, find themselves exploring the quantum realm, interacting with strange new creatures and embarking on an adventure that will push them beyond the limits of what they thought was possible. Ant-Man is back. Paul Rudd bringing him back to the MCU in his movie. And of course, I shouldn't say all the people you know and love. Some of the people you know and love from the Ant-Man movies are back with him. It also marks the real, I would say, full-fledged, full-throated introduction of the idea of Kang the Conqueror and who that might be in the Marvel Universe. So what did you guys think about Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania? Did you like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay? Andrew, you're going to kick us off.
This movie's getting lambasted online, but I am going to say I liked this movie.
All right. Andrew liked it. John?
I didn't.
Didn't.
No.
There is no didn't category.
I didn't like it.
There you go. Thank you. Thank you.
I didn't dislike it.
I'm just gonna be right in the middle of an Ormsby Paula sandwich. I think it was just okay. I think it was. In fact, I might even say high side of okay. It depends on what I'm in the mood for thinking about. This is one of those movies where it's like if I think of it one way, I'm like, yeah, okay. I think that's on the high side okay. If I think about it another way, I'm like, I didn't really like that. So there's a lot to talk about here, I think. And I do think we'll probably do a little bit of SIF spoilage on this when we're done, guys, just because there are a few things, whether it be post-credit scenes or whatever that we might want to chat about. But in a non-spoilery way, I think there's still lots to chat about. Andrew, you seem to like it the most. So tell us some of the things you thought about this movie.
It's actually my favorite Ant-Man movie of the three.
What?
Wow.
I know.
That
I
hot
did not-
take right off the bat.
I did not like the first Ant-Man, and I
this
thought
explains
the
so
first
much.
or the second Ant-Man was meh. But
This explains so much. This explains a lot.
This is going to be more heated than our Avatar chat.
Here's why. I think
Buckle
I've
in.
finally come to terms with just not caring about physics when it comes to the Ant-Man movies. It was my least favorite thing about the Ant-Man, the first film, is just the total disregard for any continuity when it came to physics, and it that really stuck with me. It just irked me. And they kind of turned that up to 11 in the second movie with just how ridiculous it is. But there were some good characters in that one. This one, though, this movie, I think, is out of all the Ant-Man movies, it feels like it has the most weight. Like it actually means the most to the actual overarching Marvel universe. Like this instance that happened to Ant-Man is like significant. Like when he was fighting Ghost, or in the first one when he was fighting Yellow Jacket, it didn't mean anything for the overarching story, and Ant-Man would show up in other movies like Civil War, and he would help fight at the airport.
To me. It meant something to me.
Yeah. But yeah, for me, this is the first time where I've watched an Ant-Man movie. I'm like, okay, this one matters. This one's important. So.
It's interesting you would say that. I think I would almost argue the same exact truth, but make the opposite point, which is...
I agree, yeah.
I think some of the beauty of the Ant-Man movies is that they weren't necessarily over-connected to what was going on in the MCU. And the fact that this one is so concentrated on moving the MCU forward and doing work for the MCU is, I think, a weakness of the film, specifically a weakness of making it an Ant-Man movie. I don't know why this is an This could have been anybody else, as far as I'm concerned, but
maybe that's why I like it.
yeah,
and it's precisely why I didn't. They wasted the biggest sort of unique value add of Ant-Man, which is his size shifting ability. We never once got a sequence where his shrinking or growing was useful in a context that we could actually appreciate. The scene in the second movie where they throw a giant Pez dispenser on the road is awesome. The scene in the first movie where he's running up the barrel of a gun is like, oh, that's such a cool image. We don't get any of that here because he's in some Never Never Land where size, context, and reality and gravity don't matter. So when he's the size of a building, I'm like, oh, is he the size of a building? Because I don't know if he's standing in front of a building or another. There's no context. There's no frame of reference to any of it. And I was just so very disconnected from, does this matter? Can people even die in the quantum realm? Do they breathe oxygen? How does this work? I don't know. I don't care. That was my whole experience was just like, I wanted to like it. I wanted to connect to it, but they never gave me anything grounded or anything approaching relatable for 2 hours.
John, I think you make a few really good points there, and I want to circle back to them at some point. But Andrew, I don't want to cut you short of some of the things you liked about the movie. So go ahead and continue on. So one of the things you enjoyed was the fact that it really mattered to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. There's a real MCU weight and gravitas to what's going on here, which I agree with.
Yeah. It's interesting because it felt like this is the first time that Scott Lang was faced with a task that he had to rise to a challenge that I hadn't seen him do compared to the other MCU heroes. Like I look at Iron Man and I'm like, okay, yeah, Iron Man has taken on an enemy far greater than him and succeeded, Every single time I watched an Ant-Man movie, it was like he was taking on an equal, so it wasn't as impressive when he won. Mm-hmm. And I think that in a movie where you have Kang the Conqueror as the main villain, versus Ant-Man. I mean, it's going to be, you're kind of intrigued, like, okay, how is he going to be able to do anything, And that's what kept me intrigued throughout the entire movie. It's just
did you get the satisfaction that fight or that billing was fulfilled? That we had like a good showdown between these that really showed off their powers? Because I don't know that we got that.
No, but I will say Jonathan Majors as Kang, I'm all for it. The guy was good. The guy was very good. I am really looking forward to the different culminations, the Kang.
The different variants we're going to get from him.
Exactly, yeah, because we've been teased with He Who Remains, which he was in the Loki series, and now we're getting this iteration of Kang the Conqueror, and they've alluded to millions and millions of other, types of variants and stuff. It's an Ant-Man movie, but I also think it's very much a Kang movie. This is Kang's movie instead.
It felt more like a Kang movie. It did.
I think there's, I remember when it happened on Loki, I was very excited that they were giving the TV shows a real piece of the pie. Like when Jonathan Majors' first appearance as this character in the MCU happens on a television show, that says something to me, and I guess
in a good way.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. No, like it to me, it makes the cross-pollination from the two platforms, it makes them feel more secure. It makes them feel like they really consider them as equals or at least as partners. And so that's good. I was very much looking forward. He was so good in that scene that I was very much looking forward to seeing him again as the character and seeing what he would do with it. I agree with you. He's astonishing in this movie. I'm so glad we're going to have this characterization and this villain going forward for whatever movies, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So I really do like Jonathan Majors, and I like what he's doing with the character, and I think he fills the role very, very well. So that's something I think is good in this movie.
Nice. John, do you have any positives for this one?
That's the thing. I don't want to say I hated it, and when I say I dislike it, I think it's just the closest on this particular rating scale. It was just so very forgettable and disposable and meaningless. The entire time I just kind of felt like, why are we doing this, and why are we doing it this way? It didn't feel like an Ant-Man movie. The stakes don't really matter because everyone who dies will just come back. Everyone that's already died came back in this movie, and it's the kind of thing where I don't know why I should care about this when the other two Ant-Man movies as Aaron mentioned, sort of bucking the trend of the rest of the MCU, very specifically went insular and went intimate. They kept their stakes small, pun intended, and they kept the stories really grounded with like, this just affects Scott and his family. The entire second movie, nobody dies. It's just about saving Michelle Pfeiffer. That's it. The world isn't going to stop. Things aren't going to get out of hand and kill everybody. It's just, we got to save Hope's mom from the quantum realm. And then the whole movie, they just play keep away with their little suitcase laboratory. And then this movie is, oh, by the way, Scott's daughter is grown up, 10 years older than she should be, and she's a super scientist, and she built a portal to the quantum realm, and also she unleashed, Kang on the multiverse of all. Is the quantum realm part of the multiverse, or is it part of our universe? I don't know. That's not explained very well either. But apparently he could get out, or might get out, or might, I don't know. Doesn't matter. And then immediately, within the first 4 minutes of the movie, we're in the quantum realm, a place up until now we've only been described as this like subliminal void where it looks like a screensaver. There's nothing down there. It's just weird colors and pretty lights. And now there's like a government, and they have booze, and they have guns and spaceships. And has this always been here? Why did nobody mention it? It's just very, everything just felt kind of like lazy and thrown together. And we never saw Paul Rudd do Ant-Man the way he had before. He didn't get a chance to really be funny. He didn't get a chance to really.
He's funny.
He's funny, but I don't know. I feel like
funny. John, this movie's funny. There's some good humor in this movie.
This movie's funny, but it's
I'll
funny in inappropriate moments, which I don't like.
I think maybe a better way to phrase it's less funny than the other two.
I agree with that.
Especially since Michael Pena's not here.
I was just going to say
Michael Pena's not here, so it's not as funny.
Like, why couldn't they have him somewhere just as a cutaway, maybe, or he's up on Earth and he's just like, hey, where'd you guys go? And he just nothing. Not even.
I love that. Andrew, I love that you were like, so John, was there anything you liked about it? And it's just a list of continuing flood of things that he didn't like about it.
I'm sorry. Exactly. I did not.
John, what do you think of Jonathan Majors?
He was great. I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do with whatever character he comes back as, whatever variant they reincorporate. I think he's excellent. And there's something to his really calm delivery, and it's really slow and deliberate. It's very menacing, and it's like, oh shoot, this guy really could like destroy your entire existence and not even care. That is powerful. He was great. And to be fair, I think everyone was. I loved Michael Douglas in this. They gave him a lot more to do, I felt, and I really enjoyed his character and the stuff he was doing in it. Michelle Pfeiffer had a lot more to do. I thought she did a really good job. It's just all in service of a movie that I didn't care about, unfortunately.
I think it's interesting to see a character who I don't know how I would have, portrayed a character who is removed from time itself. Like what effect it would have on one's mannerisms, the way their demeanor and everything. It's just the way that he's decided to portray Kang, as this insanely calm, patient. He sounds patient, but he's not. Like he could be saying things that are incredibly intimidating. Yeah, he's just whispering it to you like he's giving you his order at McDonald's or something, and just that lack of emotion sometimes is,
there's a very like chilling aspect to his performance that I appreciate. And I think the best thing I can say about Ant-Man and Quantumania is it pretty well establishes the stakes for Phase 5 and why I think going forward I might be invested. I think as a first episode to a season, it's interesting. I think it sets out some things pretty well and gets me intrigued. But as a standalone Ant-Man movie, it just fell flat.
This was the first thing I messaged to some friends when they asked about what I thought of the movie. Was I said season 5, episode 1 of MCU is fine, but I'm really excited to see where the season goes. Like I think this is going to be a good season of cinema TV. And it's really astonishing to me how much the MCU has become like watching a television show.
For better and worse.
For better and worse. And it's becoming less and less like an anthology even. Like it's so interconnected sometimes that it really just does feel like a TV show that's, going on to the next episode. I think for me, that is not the confusion, but the back and forth I go over with myself about this movie is I like where we're going. I like where the path that this movie is setting us on to. It's just a weird thing on its own for me to try to figure out, is it a good movie? Do I like this movie? I don't know that I do. It's okay. Did I have a good time? Yes, I think I did. But I had a good time because it's MCU. Everything about me enjoying it is like because I have the history with it, because I'm excited about where it's going, because I have a history with this character. If this was the first Ant-Man movie, I don't know that I'd care as much about Ant-Man as I do.
You'd have no idea what was going on.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, John, you mentioned what I believe to have mentioned in your litany of things you've mentioned that you don't like.
I can't help myself.
One of them that I wanted to circle back to, I think, is my least favorite thing about the movie. It's the setting. And when you take it out of a world we know, you completely neuter Ant-Man's powers. You completely neuter our ability to understand what's happening. So it's very confusing because we have no point of reference for this world. So we don't have a toy train. We don't have the Pez display. We don't understand.
The toy train is like one of the best sequences in any of the movies in that phase 4, I think it was. I love that sequence where they just cut to a wide shot and the little train falls over with a small sound effect. And that's brilliant. We don't have any of that. Even close to that here.
No, and so you neuter what makes these movies fun, like what makes this particular franchise. If you take the franchise within the universe, what makes this particular franchise fun is completely neutered, right? You also take us away from all the auxiliary characters that we know who are connected to the family. And the most fun I had Ant-Man wise in this movie were the bookends in the real world, in the reading the memoir I thought was really fun. And, the stuff that happened.
Like 2 different movies at that point.
That's what I'm saying. And I'm saying for this franchise, enjoyed the bookend movies.
But there's no way to introduce a character like Kang in a movie like the one you're describing, where it's
right. So then maybe they should.
That's my point. That is absolutely my point.
This should have been a Doctor Strange movie, or maybe this should have been Thor.
You know what? It should have been a Guardians movie, if I'm being honest. And I know it was never going to work out that way, but this has a very Guardians feel to it. It's a worlds we don't know, aliens. This. By the way, one of the other things I wanted to talk about. This movie wears its references right on its sleeve. Like I feel like this movie was so Star Wars at times that it was silly.
They went straight for the Mos Eisley Cantina. They're like, oh, what if we have a bar and there's broccoli heads and drinks? And it's like, okay,
yeah. So if you're going with that idea of exploring new creatures and those kind of things, if you're going Cell Wars or whatever you want to call it, then that's what the Guardians do. Like I don't know that you could have picked a worse character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe to put in this situation. And
right, because I think part of Paul Rudd's appeal and as Ant-Man was he was just the everyday dad. His entire characterization was, I just want to be a better dad. That was it. He wasn't trying to save the world. He didn't want to get mixed up with everything. He just wanted to get out of jail and raise his kids. And that's what made him, I think, a more interesting, more relatable hero, is because he's not Captain America. He's not Iron Man. He's not on the brink of some multi-dimersal war. He just wanted to go home. And this movie, the whole time, they're just trying to go home back to that. But it just felt so disconnected from what we like from him as a character that, I don't know. I completely agree with what you were saying there. He's probably the worst character to pick for this.
I really think he is.
Wow, I think he's the best character to pick for this. Everything you guys are saying are the things that I love. Here's why I think he's the best character pick for this era.
Okay, you're going to have to explain because you're going to contradict yourself because you've literally said you don't like the first 2 Ant-Man movies. So,
no, but I like him for this movie.
Okay, explain.
Like, okay, so you say out of all the heroes in the MCU to introduce Kang with, that Ant-Man was the wrong one to do it, right? That's what you said?
I said of all the characters in the MCU to put in this movie with this way to introduce Kang, yes.
I think it's the best because if you were to have Doctor Strange or Thor or any of, the big hitters, the challenge wouldn't seem as significant.
Well, then you've messed up your villain. If the challenge doesn't seem significant, that's a Kang problem, not a
No, that's
Ant-Man
not a
Thor
Kang problem. That's an MCU problem of us continuously seeing these heroes win over and over and over and over again. So the only way to raise those stakes are to have a character like Kang that is so high that you once again start to question the abilities of these heroes to take on this character.
Right. But so you're saying that they wouldn't be able to do that with the other characters?
I don't think it would be as significant. Like if this was a Thor movie and we were introduced to Kang.
There was literally a line where Kang mentions having defeated another version of Thor.
Yes, that is my point. Okay, yes, perfect.
So why don't we get that movie? Why didn't we get to watch the one where he defeats Thor? That would have been a good movie.
No, but I wish I could explain this better. That scene where he says that he killed a variant of Thor.
Mm-hmm.
We know how strong and powerful Thor is compared to Ant-Man. It's a human to an ant. It's like they are nowhere near on the same power level, these two.
Sure.
So when you hear Kang say that he has killed Thor in like a different universe,
mm-hmm.
that raises the intensity and tension building in this movie. Like, well, if he killed Thor, how is Ant-Man going to deal with this, And that is what made this movie so exciting for me, is the fact that out of all the heroes they chose Ant-Man and made it for this movie, not the MCU as a whole, but for this movie, it raised those stakes and it raised the tension for me to great heights.
I understand what you're saying, and I'm inclined to agree with you. And without spoiling, if I can, the movie doesn't do what you're describing. It cops out, and that's disappointing.
Yes, it does, but it cops out for 10 minutes of the movie. For the rest of it, they were constantly building up that tension, and I was just riding this wave that turned into a tsunami, that turned into a hurricane, and I'm like,
I feel like that's an important distinction, though. They eventually.
Let's be fair. Andrew has not said this is the greatest movie ever. That he, loves it. Like he likes it more.
I'm just saying why. So. I'm telling you why it worked for me. That is not a correlation of. Since this movie worked for me, it is the best movie of all time.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I have huge issues with this movie. For instance, the worst thing the MCU has ever done is in this movie.
What's that?
MODOK.
Yeah, that was.
So we haven't gotten to the MODOK of everything, and or MODOK of everything, and
MODOK.
I knew we would get there eventually.
It's the dumbest thing the MCU's ever done. It is the dumbest thing the MCU's ever done.
You could have filled a hot air balloon with the amount of air you just exhaled there. It was just like a huge sigh.
You know me. I am a movie optimist. I try to see where the filmmakers are coming from, where, I try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. The decisions made in the characterization of MODOK, or even his inclusion, as it were, in this story, are some of the most baffling decisions I've ever encountered.
I thought he was pretty funny, but why?
He's hilarious, but nothing about it works for this movie.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really important distinction. I laughed at some of the MODOK stuff, but I don't know who MODOK's supposed to be. Stupid it was.
Is MODOK supposed to be funny?
Yes, he's a very funny character.
Yes.
Okay.
I think all of that was intentional. I think it did. I think
I meant like in the comics, is he's traditionally like a funny character? Okay.
I would assume so, just because I've seen a couple episodes of the TV show, and that's
Patton Oswalt had that. I totally forgot that Patton Oswalt did that TV show.
So
that's a good version of MODOK, actually. There you go.
I thought he was funny. I thought he was well used. What about it did you hate? Because I seem to be the only one that actually liked MODOK in this. He was one of the only characters like this. Give me more of this guy. He's fun.
Okay,
this is it's so bananas. I love it.
I think the line for the MCU to cross from, like silly to stupid is Howard the Duck. Like when we got the Howard the Duck cameo in Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm like, oh gosh, that's so stupid, but I love it. It's funny. This was so utterly past that. It was clashing with the tonal tension of this movie, having this character that just takes you out of it, and you're like, why am I watching Beavis and Butthead? And okay, I don't know about you guys, but I would say the visuals in this movie, whether they work story-wise for you, I think you can agree it's a beautiful looking movie. The colors, the vibrancy, everything looks good. But
I thought it was just like a muddy soup. It looked like a bunch of ice cream melted together. It was just like a brown goop. It didn't.
Oh man,
it didn't. It had no depth or like.
I thought some of the creature design was cool. It reminded me a lot of Strange World from earlier this year.
Yeah,
I mean it's literally it's the same plot. It's the same plot as Strange World.
There's definitely some individual shots and creatures I like, but I think as a whole, the color palette of this was just like muddy goop. And
interesting.
That's just, kind of the MCU, though, John.
Yeah, this is not. I had the exact same problem, perhaps even more so with Thor: Love and Thunder, and Multiverse of Madness. It all just feels like a brown soup. And
it's all muted. They just they when they color correct, I don't know. They have this
brown
particular thing they like to do, and they just
go over to the little effects panel and grab muddy soup as a LUT, and they grab it and they just drop it on the whole timeline.
Well, the point I was trying to make is I think that the MCU generally has made some of the most beautiful like action movies ever. Like you look at Infinity War or Endgame and just how invoking.
I would say awe-inspiring. I would say, expansive, like those kind of words. Yeah.
And then you look at the CGI creation of MODOK, and it looks like he was created in Adobe Photoshop. It's the CGI
to be fair,
is so bad.
It's hard to figure out giant head, tiny limb guy. Like that's not an easy thing to do.
But they
I just don't understand why they make his head big. Why they have to also stretch his head? Why they? Why did they just make it big? Why was he stretched?
I think it's a comic book thing.
Don't make him MODOK.
That's my main thing. That's where I was going to go when we got through this. That's not MODOK. blew my mind the choice they made about who MODOK is, and I'll just say it that way.
Yeah, why?
What a really strange, unnecessary, and wild choice.
So you would have preferred that MODOK was just an entirely new character.
Yes.
It's oh god, yeah, oh yeah.
Yes, his own character.
See,
yes.
I don't know that I disagree with that, but I kind of liked that they were reincorporating some other older history back into this one. I don't know that it makes sense. I was like, oh, it's cool to see this person again. But I can see what you're saying. That
none of this movie makes sense. This is one of the most nonsensical Marvel movies ever made.
Is it your
it's almost just Thomas asked in the world building. It's just
Thomas asked in the chat. Minutes. Is it your worst MCU film?
It's going to take more time for me to know for sure the answer to that question.
John's giving an affirmative. It is the worst MCU movie.
I updated my Letterboxd list last night after I came home from the cinema, and with a 4 out of 10 rating, it is my lowest rated MCU. Wow. Which again, a 4 out of 10 is still like I enjoyed it. It was fun, but I'm immediately going to forget it. I probably won't come back and rewatch it for a long time. And my next lowest would be the one just before this, Wakanda Forever. I thought was similarly just like a mash.
I liked Wakanda Forever much more.
Broken ideas, and maybe I'm just tired of the MCU right now. Which
this is the point I want to get to. And before I go there, because this was my next big talking point that I wanted to talk about. Before I go there, I do want to say one of the things I appreciated about MODOK was it finally gave Sonic the Hedgehog's old teeth something to do. So I really, really did appreciate that. So I think one of the hardest things I'm dealing with, I don't think it's Marvel fatigue. I think Marvel has set themselves up for Phase 5 to lack stakes for me. And we've talked about this before, and it's becoming more and more evident with every movie until whatever happens in Secret Wars, I'm guessing, that resets everything, and we finally have a single timeline, time, space, whatever, nothing matters. And I think the kill switch on this, literally, was Multiverse of Madness. I think there's the very specific scene in Multiverse of Madness. I'll just say the Krasinski scene, because I don't think, it's too spoilery to say it that way. But I think that is the fulcrum point. I think that is the kill switch. I think that moment sent me into a place where I'm just going, oh, no, nothing matters. Nothing actually matters. And the more you talk about Kang and variants and incursions and all this stuff, the more I start to go, oh man, it's getting harder and harder to hold on to like caring. And I like caring,
That's exactly my biggest fault. And there was a decision that I thought Ant-Man 3 was going to make towards the end. And for a minute, I was like, oh, this is kind of ballsy. This would actually raise the stakes. It would give us some like emotional punch. And then they don't. And then they're like, what if we did this instead? And I was like, oh my God, you had an opportunity to really try something, to really impress me. And they decided not to do that. And the thing you said, Aaron, about just nothing matters. Like absolutely everyone can't die. Everyone's immortal effectively. And everyone that's already dead has just been brought back. So it's,
there's millions of timelines and millions of variants and millions of other universes and, or infinite even. Like it's just, it just nothing matters.
I was saying a second ago too, is it's so frustrating. I don't want to call myself a Marvel fanboy, but I feel like I am. Endgame is probably one of my top 10 movies ever. I adore that film. The entire Phase 3, or was that Phase? No, that was Phase 3. Just phenomenal. Like so many of those movies are fantastic. And so much of Phase 4 and now Phase 5 has just been consistently underwhelming with more. They just go bigger and crazier, but they're losing the heart and they're losing connection with like why we actually care about these characters. They just keep throwing them into bigger situations. Okay, but is there anything at risk here? Is there any reason for us to care about what happens to Paul Rudd if he's the size of 6 buildings? And I don't even know if that is a building. Does it matter if he loses this fight? Does he wins this fight? Does that matter? Like I'm so disappointed because I wanted to really, really love this movie. I love the other 2 Ant-Man movies. I think they're really underappreciated and underrated in the MCU. And for some reason, this one just big swing and a miss for me.
For many reasons, many of which we have verbalized. Yeah. All right, one more thing, guys, and then we're going to need to move on. But if you have one more thing you want to talk about it, we can certainly do that. Andrew, what's your one last thing?
2 post-credit scenes.
That is true. One
is good. One is good. One is not.
Interesting. I thought they were similarly. Interesting. That's a very interesting thing you just said there. Can't wait to talk about it later.
Yep.
John, do you have anything else you wanted to say?
Yeah. There is a scene where there's a blob alien that kind of turns into Kirby and swallows an enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a funny little moment. And then another character who I don't even know if he has a name because we barely learn about him. He says, I didn't know he could do that. And the audience laughs, right? And I'm sitting there going, did anyone know he could do that? Does it matter? I didn't know he could do that either because we don't know anything about anyone. And it was an effective joke, but it also really clearly lampshades the entire problem with this movie is I don't know the rules of this universe. Can everyone swallow people whole? I don't know. And it was it was such a good little microcosmic moment where he just says, I didn't know he could do that. I'm like, that's me the whole movie, buddy.
I'm telling you, there should be a YouTube channel that makes jokes about things that don't make sense in movies, and I should write for that channel because I would love to. Write about how much nonsense is in this movie. There's so much nonsense that you just.
That doesn't sound like it would work, Aaron. Doesn't sound like it would work.
My one final thing is I'm going to need some time with whatever writer decided the human male has 7 holes because I need to understand how we came up with the number 7. So
do you think
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Your eyes.
Your eyes count. That's 2 more.
Those are holes.
You cry out of them.
Yep.
And you sweat too. It's a weird question. I get where they were going, and it's a funny moment, but it's also like
I think.
all right.
Yeah.
7. Really quick. I know we already did our last thought. Does anyone have any thoughts on the recasting of Cassie Lang's character? This is the third
she's
actress
horrible in this.
in
She's
as many
horrible.
movies to do it.
I don't think Kathy Newton. I don't think she's good in this.
I disagree. I think she's fine. I think she holds her own really well.
She doesn't know how to emote scared or nervous.
I'm all about recasting when you need to recast. Doesn't bother me one bit.
Okay,
so
fair enough. I don't really have strong opinions either way. It just struck me as like, oh, she's 25 in this? Because even without the blip, she should only be like 15 or 16 here.
It's clear they're setting up Marvel babies or whatever they're going to call it, but you know,
Avengers
like
Junior.
Yeah. So yeah, we're getting a lot of those younger characters, and I get it. I get it from a marketing perspective for sure. Hope it works for them. All right, there you go. Some thoughts, varied as they are, on Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. We will do a SIF spoil on this as well. That should show up in your feed. Let's move on and talk about You People.
Oh, goody.
A new couple and their families reckon with modern love amid culture clashes, societal expectations, and generational differences. You People is out on Netflix. This is Jonah Hill. I think writing. This
he had a co-writer credit on this.
Yeah, definitely had a co-writer credit on this.
I thought that was maybe because he just improvised a lot, but he could have actually put pen to paper.
No, I think that they wrote it together. Lauren London, Eddie Murphy, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, David Duchovny, kind of are the main couple and parents. What did you guys think of this one? Did you like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay? John, kick us off.
This was just okay.
All right, Andrew.
Well, I really like my life, and since this movie is based on my life, I guess I really like this movie. So, yeah.
Wow, I didn't know this.
No, I'm not joking. I'm not joking.
I'm going to land on the low side of okay. I think is where I'm going to land. Maybe right down the middle. I have lots I like about this movie and some things I really didn't. But Andrew, I think you've teased a story really well. So please fill us in. How is this your life?
This was actually a section of my life for about a year. I dated a girl. She was from Africa, and her father was a devout Muslim. And since I was white and not Muslim, he did not like me at all. Which begs the question, why did he move to the Ozarks? I mean, you're kind of limiting your daughter's options, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, like the awkward, he wouldn't shake my hand. He wouldn't talk to me. It was very awkward. And then so I'm watching this movie and I'm watching how Jonah Hill and Eddie Murphy are bantering back and forth and just the awkward tension. Side tangent real quick. Jonah Hill is the only actor I can think of that does awkward tension right for me. Like if I were to think of a movie like uncomfortable tension, like a Borat film, like where even though it's, more realistic since it's happening to people that aren't actors, there's still like an awkward, it's a lot of people find that awkward moment funny. I don't.
You're talking about cringe humor.
Yeah, cringe humor. Exactly. Yeah. It doesn't work for me. Like I also just like, oh, I don't like it. I don't like it. But for some reason, when Jonah Hill does it, it works for me. So maybe that's just my big in. Yeah.
So real quick, did the situations and the cringe and the awkwardness ring true to you, to your experience?
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah. Did this feel authentic to you?
Very much so.
Oh, that's good.
Obviously, it's a West Coast culture kind of thing, as opposed to the Ozarks. But like the dynamics and everything rang true.
That's great.
Okay.
On both sides.
Yeah, I don't. My issues with this movie, and I suspect we all had some of the same, wasn't that it felt inauthentic. Yeah, who would like to kind of go second? I guess since Andrew already spoke.
I mean, I can talk about some of the things I like about this movie. One, I will just say, Eddie Murphy's career is a really interesting thing to kind of process and look into, and I really like him taking this role. I like him doing more things like this.
Really?
Yes, because I think part of the issue I've had with Eddie Murphy from like the movies when he started, when he was just complete charisma and magnetism on the screen in just a mile a minute. I just watched.
I just rewatched 48 Hours this week, and yeah, that's 41 years old now.
That
I just
can't be.
rewatched Beverly Hills Cop.
I just watched Beverly Hills Cop 2 for the first time last week. And you know, that's a different level of Eddie Murphy in that movie, by the way. He's like way over the top in Beverly Hills Cop 2.
And it
still kind of works in that movie. But then it just kind of got to the place where I think he was fulfilling a certain type of role. And I like it when he steps into something like this where there's those pieces of his personality, but he's definitely playing against type in some ways.
This is written for a Denzel or a or
it's interesting to hear you say that, because I had the opposite experience where the whole time I'm like, oh, he feels wasted. It feels like he's not able to really shine and kind of get some of that. I don't need him to be off the wall. I don't need him to be live action donkey. Like, I'm not expecting him to be loud and boisterous in every performance, but he felt so muted and reserved here. And unfortunately so, because I feel like that's his strength and they're kind of playing against it here. He wasn't bad, but I feel like this could have been anybody.
Interesting. I was looking at it and I was going, yeah, he's going against type, but does the character present an authentic front? Is this a believable character?
Yeah,
is he serving the purpose? And I thought he was. Yeah.
Of the parents, he is the most believable to me. He is the most authentic. One of my major issues with this movie is how inauthentic everybody else feels in this movie. All the parents. I think Jonah.
Well, there's only two parents that matter in this movie.
Yeah, David Duchovny's kind of a throwaway. He has two running jokes, and
Nia Long is it's really about Eddie Murphy and Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and the movie's. I mean, that's not us extrapolating anything. The movie is very clear about that, even through how it ends. You know, like it's very clear that these are the two characters that are needing to learn something.
Right.
In growing, which also makes it interesting because they're not. Are they the protagonists then? Like, who's the protagonist of this movie? It
shifts. It shifts.
Yeah,
that was weird. I think structurally this movie needed some help because straight away we have the meet cute, and then we have a montage where they fall in love. Then we have a time jump, and it's like, oh, okay, the romance isn't really the central part of this film. Because that's resolved in the first 30 minutes.
It's the catalyst.
The next 90 minutes of the movie is the fallout of what happens when these two cultures clash: the white Jewish culture from Beverly Hills and the black Muslims from Inglewood. When they clash, what happens? There are some interesting interactions and dichotomy there, but I feel like so much of it was I don't know. Inauthentic might be one word. The shifting protagonists and some of the scenes with Julia felt like this doesn't feel. This feels like she's.
Oh, I know those women. I know those women.
I understand, but it definitely feels elevated in a way that feels to me different than the central relationship. The Jonah Laura stuff feels much more authentic to me, much more grounded to me than some of the wacky stuff that's happening with the parents. And I think for me, the impact that has is when the movie tries to get like really serious at the end, like really emotional. At the end, I just couldn't quite get myself there because I was like, up until now, I haven't bought these as, real people, other than, again, the central two characters.
I think there was a couple good ideas and another good movie in this movie that they just didn't explore fully. There's a sequence or a couple scenes where Eddie Murphy, as the future father-in-law, decides to tag along on Jonah Hill's Vegas bachelor party. And I thought this in and of itself would have been an interesting movie. Like Meet the Parents, but on a Vegas bachelor trip. Meet the Parents meets The Hangover. Like that would have been an interesting film just on its own. But in this movie, it's like 12 minutes and they don't really use it that effectively.
I don't like that scene. It adds nothing to the movie.
No, it was all filler and it wasn't really funny or interesting. And it was telling us stuff we already kind of knew about these characters. And there were other scenes where the two families met over dinner. And I'm like, well, this is cribbing directly from Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. And that movie came out, 55 years ago now, 1968, where like the two cultures come together over a meal and they're trying to work through their differences without being overtly racist. And there's some humor in that, but they only do that for 15 minutes in the movie. Then they move on to like the other. It felt like it kept shifting focus and shifting tones. 1 minute it's a romance, next minute it's a rom-com, then it's a drama, then it's like, I don't know, an after-school special about race relations and like why you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. And there's a lot of conflicting ideas here that individually I think kind of worked, but they just needed to pick a lane.
I agree, and I think my major negative with this movie, and I apologize that I've so quickly moved on to my negatives, but my major negative with this movie is I think it almost made a much better point before it undid it. And there's a wonderful metaphor from Jonah Hill's podcast partner about race relations in the U.S. and how, comparing it to someone who's been cheated on. And it's like,
that was really, I loved that scene. That was great.
I really loved it. And I thought the movie was going to go forward really with that idea and just go, it's the idea that sometimes you have to live in the discomfort because the discomfort is real. Like, and the movie, but the movie, this is probably too spoilery. Apologies. This has been out for a little bit, but the movie kind of goes kittens and rainbows and unicorns, guys. Like it really kind of.
I don't like the ending to this movie.
That's what I'm saying. It makes a really interesting choice to just kind of turn all the work it's been doing on its head. I didn't understand it felt like, and I don't think it was, but because Netflix doesn't do this, but it felt like something that had been changed by an audience reaction. You know what I mean? Like they had done some sort of testing and the audience was like, no, I want it to be all okay.
I don't want it to be real, even though the first 90% of this movie has been real. Yeah. Here's tangentially, here's where I think the ending of this movie fails in its messaging, kind of like you were saying, is the entire movie has been predicated upon this idea of that the parents need to stop meddling or try to stop, what's the word? Putting yourself into something, introducing or injecting yourself, interfering. That's good. Yeah. In the relationship of others, don't interfere and, don't try and, just give us our space. And the ending of this movie is those two parents the most insanely injecting yourself and interfering and meddling with the relationship.
Felt like if I was Jonah Hill or what's her name, Laura
you'd be furious.
I would be very embarrassed and put on the spot. And it's like, this is making me uncomfortable. You just decided to get us back together without even discussing it with us. And yeah, that ending is like, what? Okay, I guess so. Like you said, it felt kind of like an audience rewrite at the end there. And I don't know. One thing we haven't discussed, and I think it's not just an issue that plagues you people, but so many streamers, and I think a lot of even theatrical releases nowadays, this movie's 35 minutes too long. There's absolutely no reason this needs to be over 2 hours. There's not enough story to support. It felt longer. It really did. Because it's just, there's not enough meat on the bone to stretch this story out, especially when you wrap up the romance stuff in the first 15, 20 minutes. And then it's just the parents. It's just that.
Yeah.
I feel the middle act of this movie just dragged for so long. And then we finally get some resolution at the end. A little bit of it felt like it was coming out of nowhere. It's like, oh, wow. Jonah Hill seems like he's laying everything out on the table here. This is a great impassioned speech. Where was this before? Why did we have no hint of this until now?
That is my favorite scene in the movie. The two confrontations, that was my favorite part of the movie. And both were done like they were both totally different issues, but they were both treated so well. Like the confrontation with Julie and Eddie was just so good. I love how every dynamic of a relationship, both those in it and the parents, the surrounding people, are on display in this movie. Like you could have the angry, meddling father. You could have the muted racism of the mother character, and then you have the tangential friends like Mo, who has did it. That was probably the funniest line in the entire movie, was her on the plane talking to Eddie Murphy. I'm Mo and I have blank.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just felt that everything was represented, maybe because this is all just felt really personal and real.
Sure.
But no, I thought that this movie was really well done.
I will also say I laughed at different places. There's stuff going on at a service that Jonah Hill goes to where there's several interactions that I laughed at. I thought was hilarious. I think this movie is fearless in some ways that other movies aren't, with the things it says and the things it does. And I like that. I appreciate that. I think it's important I think humor is a nice way into really exploring human behavior and human thoughts, and I think this movie understands that. So I enjoyed some of that stuff. I think we're safe to kind of do one last thing if you guys have it. John, you got anything else you want to say about you people?
Yeah, I think besides being inconsistent and unfocused, individual moments worked really well. There's a scene at the basketball court where Jonah Hill sort of subverts the expectations of Eddie Murphy's character, and I loved that. It was such like, oh, okay, he has been misjudging him, and here's why that's not a good thing. You shouldn't judge people just based on X, Y, or Z. And I thought that was a really good scene that had the entire movie better carried that theme across the 15 minutes. I would have really enjoyed it more. As it is, this would get maybe a very soft recommendation for me. It's on Netflix, so I mean, you got nothing else going on.
Andrew, one last thing.
Besides no post-credit scene, I would say, and I think, Aaron, you said this earlier, but I'll reiterate, live in the uncomfortable, because that will lead you to a better understanding of a different perspective. Live in those uncomfortable moments in this movie. Try and learn from them. Mm-hmm. This is I'm glad that there's a movie like this out there.
My one last thing is I'm just waiting for movies and television to understand how podcasts work. Just waiting for them to understand you don't just sit across from each other 30 feet from your microphone and have a quiet conversation.
That bugged me so much. I immediately elbowed my wife, and I'm like, that's a condenser mic, and he's like 6 feet away from it. What are they doing?
Also, those mics are way too close to each. You're going to get so much crosstalk.
And there was no air buffer, like anything like that. And why do you need that giant echoey space for a podcast?
And I love how it's just like at the end, they're just like, apparently have been bought by Spotify or something and have like a full that's awesome.
Really quick,
good for them.
Because we've already wrapped up, and I do this a lot. The entire sequence with Jonah Hill's boss, I think Matt Walsh, I think is the actor's name. Yeah. There's some funny moments there, but you can cut out that entire plot. He can just start the movie full-time podcaster, and it's the same film. And it's the kind of thing where there's just like extra fluff in this that doesn't contribute, doesn't add anything. And that's a problem a lot of movies are having these days.
That's how I feel about the Vegas scene.
I would have rather listened to Mo talk about race relations for 90 minutes at some point. Like that was really one of my favorite parts of the movie. Yeah. All right, let's before we head on to our best ever challenge, just a reminder that you can be a Sif Pop member. As mentioned earlier in the show, Andrew is doing the pre-show for members. If that's something you'd be interested in, really at the end of the day, it's kind of a thank you for just supporting, for saying this is something you enjoy enough to throw a couple bucks every month this way and make sure we can keep doing this. Keeps the website going at sifpop.com, keeps this podcast going. We really do appreciate it. If you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/sifpop. All right, let's do. Let's go ahead and do
Best ever challenge.
the best ever
of
challenge.
Hyphenated titles.
Best ever hyphenated movies. John, kick us off. We'll go from number 5 to number 1, and of course, if somebody has it higher, you can
Trump.
You can trumpet. So,
You
John,
got
kick
it.
us off. What's your number 5?
Quick preamble. This is actually a shorter list than I would have expected. There's not that many hyphenated movies, and the ones that are all within the same 2 or 3 series.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My number 5, Star Wars Episode 3, hyphen Revenge of the Sith. This is, I think, for my money, definitely the best of the prequel trilogy. When it finally, gets us back on Tatooine with the twin sunsets, and it kind of wraps up and connects the circle to the original movie from '77. When I saw that in theaters I think I was still a teenager at the time. That's one of those like, oh my gosh, that was a big moment for me. I loved that movie when it first came out, and I think it's aged pretty well. It's heavy on the CGI and all the George Lucas problems, but definitely the strongest of the prequels, and in the hyphenated category, good enough for top 5.
Andrew, what's your number 5?
I'm going to go with X2, X-Men United.
Good choice.
It is my favorite of all the X-Men movies. The opening scene with Nightcrawler is one of the best.
Gosh, the opening, that White House scene is so good.
Yeah,
It is.
It's so good. It's so good. I want to watch it right now.
I don't know the veracity of these comments, but I have heard that the interpretation or the depiction of Secret Service in that sequence is as close to how they would really react to any sort of intruder in real life. And
Really?
That's interesting to me. Just the response time and the way they lock down certain areas and quarters. It's apparently a more accurate depiction than how they're often portrayed in media.
Nice.
Interesting.
I have an X-Men movie at number 5 as well, but I went with Days of Future Past.
That's a good one. That's a real
That was a very good one.
I've been thinking about Days of Future Past recently with all the multiversal stuff going on,
because
it was really one of the first movies that kind of fan serviced in that way, and I think it did a really good job at it. And yeah, so I really, really dig that movie.
It's my number 3 behind Logan. So yeah, Days of Future Past is so
X-Men.
good.
Yeah.
I think
John,
that's probably my favorite X-Men movie, and I think it probably would have made my honorable mentions here. My number 4 movie you might have heard of, also 41 years old, hard to believe, E.T., the Extraterrestrial. There was a hyphen in there in between.
Extraterrestrial. Oh,
Yep.
Oh,
E.T.
man,
my
that
honorable
was
mentions.
Extraterrestrial. I mean, this is brilliant. I mean, this is Spielberg at his finest. That combination of like whimsy and discovery and like childhood backyard adventures. It kind of feels like a bit like Stand By Me meets Stranger Things meets I don't know. It's a lot of fun. I can't wait to show this to my kids when they're a couple of years older. Spielberg knows how to do it. He has for 50 years now.
Yep. Andrew, what is your number 4?
It's a Beavis and Butthead Do America.
I knew you'd have a Beavis and Butthead in there.
This is...
There's a hyphen between butt and head. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah.
I will argue with people all day long that Beavis and Butthead is one of the funniest movies ever made.
I only first watched it like a couple months because I think we reviewed the sequel on the podcast.
Beavis and Butthead Do the Universe.
Yeah, and I had never seen the original until just last summer, and it's great.
Yeah.
Oh man, I got a kick out of it every single time. Feel bad, like it stars, Demi Moore and Bruce Willis. It's sad. It's kind of sad to see what's going on with Bruce Willis right now. But
I was just diagnosed with frontal lobe dementia.
Not one of the better diagnoses.
No. He retired from acting a year or two ago because he said he couldn't read. Aphasia. He couldn't read anymore. So
this is kind of an expansion on what's really going on.
That's so sad.
Yeah.
But no, this movie is hilarious, and go and watch it if you haven't.
I think crude humor, when executed correctly, can be very, very effective. And this movie is just, it's gross, it's offensive, but it's clever at the same time, which I think is important.
Mike Judge is so smart.
I think that's the key. It's smart and offensive, and that combination is like a peanut butter and chocolate. It just goes.
It's like South Park, right? Like it's it's clear that there's a lot going on under the hood. My number 4 is Ben-Hur, the OG.
Trump. Oh man!
Wait, which OG? Which OG? Because there's been 3 or 4 of them.
Heston. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's my pick too. Okay.
Wait, there's other ones besides the
There was a
Heston
silent film from 25 that is also very good.
one? Oh,
That's
I've only seen the Heston one.
That's the one where horses actually died while filming.
The
silent
25 one?
Yeah. Because they just there's no way to fake it. They just did it for real, and some horses died, and they kept it in the movie because you're not going to throw that film out. That cost a couple horses.
Yeah.
The silent. Yeah. Not wrong. So that was the 3 for me.
All right. So on to number 3s. John, what's your number 3?
Spider-Man 2.
Oh, okay.
Nobody?
Nope.
I don't have that Spider-Man movie on my list.
No, I don't have that Spider-Man movie either.
All right, fair enough. This for my money is one of the crown jewels of the entire comic book genre. I think up against The Dark Knight and Endgame, probably a top 3 comic book movie all time for me. Sam Raimi, Tobey Maguire, all cylinders. This is, I think, the epitome of how to do a good sequel. Not even a fantastic sequel. It ups the stakes. It ups the tension. It puts our hero up against the wall and has him fight, really good villain throughout the whole thing. And the stuff with the runaway train on the elevated, one of the best scenes in any superhero movie. It's
very good,
phenomenal film.
Yeah.
Yep. Andrew, you're number 3.
Different Spider-Man movie, No Way Home.
Yeah, that was really good too. That was really
very
good.
nice.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, I mean,
what?
And Doc Ock.
What?
Huh?
Yeah, and Doc Ock. Yeah. I mean, it was one of those movie going experiences I'll never forget. Like yes, everybody quote unquote knew that Toby and Andrew were going to be in the movie, but we were still unsure. So until the very moment we saw Andrew Garfield walk through that portal and it became real for you, that's movie magic, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, that was up there with Captain catching the hammer. Like my theater lost. They were literally like shooting off confetti. It was just like, yes. It was No Way Home is probably my second favorite Spider-Man movie. Really, really good.
But
it is indeed good.
But no qualms at all for Spider-Man 2. I mean, like you said, the train sequence is iconic. Aaron?
My number 3 is Curse of the Were-Rabbit.
I have to see these
one of those Wallace and Gromit films, right?
I've never seen a single one.
And it's a really good one. Curse of the Were-Rabbit's really good. So yeah, highly recommend to check it out. If you are a Wallace and Gromit fan, you've probably seen it. If you aren't, I would put it towards the top of your like Wallace and Gromit catch-up list. I wouldn't put it above like the shorter ones, like A Close Shave is a really, really good one. Wrong Trousers is probably the best one. But yeah, there's lots of great Wallace and Gromit content out there, and it's well worth your time.
Is it a canonical order sort of thing, or can I just watch any?
Oh, you can just watch any.
Okay, I didn't know.
I don't think there's anything that plays off of. I could be wrong.
I don't know.
Well, no. Here's what I'll say: there are some callback jokes that maybe work better in order because, like, sometimes they'll do a similar thing to something that's been done before, and it's kind of a winky reference a little bit. But for the most part, no, I don't think there's going to be anything to worry about.
Okay.
All
right, on to the number 2s. John, Paula, what do you got?
This is where I have the 1959 version of Ben-Hur, Charlton Heston's version. 4 hours long, shot in, I think, CinemaScope. This movie's like the widest anamorphic you can get. And if you were to look up the word epic in a cinematic dictionary, this movie would be front and center. There is not a movie I've ever watched where I felt more impressed by the size and the scope and the scale of what they were doing, both narratively, because the movie takes place over like 30, 40 years. And then the individual vistas of some of these shots are like entire kingdoms in a single frame. And then the chariot race, of course, at the end, that climactic thing is just unreal to watch. And how they did it and how they were able to make it look so real and so accomplished. I love those old like swords and shields epics. And I think Ben-Hur is absolutely the top of that pile.
Yeah, you had it at number 2. I had it at number 4. I saw it for the first time in 2020. Stuck at home. I
remember you telling me about that actually.
And just was really, really impressed. It is, like you said, the definition of epic, the epitome of epic, the epitome, if you will.
Do you have any really quick? Not to sidetrack. Have you seen the 2018 version? And did
I
you
have
like that?
Toby
Did you
Kebbell,
like it?
right?
Yeah.
I don't remember loving it. I don't remember hating it either. So it probably fell somewhere in between.
Fair enough. I thought it was pretty good. I think the story just works no matter who's in it. I think it's just a really good story.
It is a great story. It is a great story. Andrew, what's your number 2?
Foreign language film from Norway called Kon-Tiki, which is actually I guess, I don't know what you would call it, a remake of a documentary. This is a movie version of like this documentary that took place.
Mm-hmm.
A long time ago, a guy named Thor Heyerdahl, there was this big question of how these Polynesian people got from one like island chain to another. And this guy theorized, well, they probably just got a whole bunch of balsa wood rafts and they just sailed. And everybody in like the archaeological community is like, balsa wood won't last that long on the ocean, salt water and stuff like that. And he's like, oh, I guarantee you it would. And like, no, it wouldn't. So he built a balsa wood raft and he actually went the 4,300-mile crossing. And it was him.
I love when people do that. When it's like, you know what? Hold my beer. Watch this.
Yeah, it was him, 3 other guys, and one of them was a documentarian. And they're like Norwegian, so they're like giant Viking people.
Right.
There's actually like footage of them jumping into the water to like wrestle great whites and to like loop around their tails with ropes and drag them onto the raft to eat these great white sharks. It's the most metal thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Bull riding a great white shark and then lassoing it and then looking at the judge for time and then you throw your cowboy hat in the air.
It's amazing.
So I was looking it up as you were describing it. So there was a documentary in 1950 that won the Oscar for Best Documentary. And then 62 years later in 2012 was the dramatized version of it from Norway.
Yes.
That's great. Cool. Putting that on my watch list. That sounds interesting.
And I think the film, like the actual movie version, was nominated for Best Foreign Language Film, but I don't think it won that year.
All right. My number 2 is the other Spider-Man movie that we should probably mention. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is my number 2.
Yeah. I have no problems with any of the Spider-Man movies mentioned today.
I'm glad we all got at least one. Because when I said Spider-Man, I'm like, I can't be the only one that picked the Spider-Man, right? I can't.
No, you are not the only one.
Okay, good.
It's interesting because I always feel like I don't like this movie as much as some people, but I really, really like this movie. It is pretty high up my all-time list. It's just such a great characterization of the Miles Morales character. A really, really compelling character that I just care about immediately and want to go along the adventure with, and it's quite an adventure. So yeah, I really enjoy.
And then visually, I think it's one of the most inventive and imaginative.
I actually don't like a lot of the visual choices.
Really?
But yeah.
Is it the second lining shading to give it that
it's the comic book
false
shading.
3D effect?
Yeah, the false 3D thing I think doesn't work, and it's also the frame rate thing. It's a reduced frame rate at times.
Yeah,
and
right.
Animating but you know why? Like the frame rate thing on Miles at the beginning of the movie is I think 10 FPS.
Yeah, he's
it's
lower.
not until the end of the movie that he actually catches up, and it's because his spider sense is actually building, so they actually increase his frame rate,
which is a very cool detail.
Smart, cool thing that they did.
That is really smart and has completely changed my mind on the subject.
Oh, you didn't know that?
I know. I'd never heard that before. That's really cool.
Actually.
Yeah. On to our number 1s. John, what do you got?
I hope I'm not the only one, but it is weird that no one else has mentioned Mission: Impossible - Fallout.
Wait, what?
Mission
There's
Impossible.
There's no dash in Fallout?
Yeah, Mission Impossible Fallout. There's a hyphen after Impossible.
Holy
it actually
crap.
might be it might actually be an M dash or an N dash, not a hyphen.
No, you are 100% right. Well,
this is the greatest action movie of the last decade. Full stop. Tom Cruise is God amongst men. The helicopter chase at the end of Mission Impossible Fallout is just top shelf stuff. Absolutely,
it's my number 2
love
now.
this.
Okay, it's
Absolutely.
my number 2.
Yeah,
Love this
I
movie.
just didn't know there was a dash in there. It didn't
I
it
think
didn't come up on my
again,
searches.
technically, I think it's an N dash, which is a longer version of a hyphen, not a hyphen. But
It counts. Absolutely
splitting
counts.
hairs. Yeah.
I can't tell the difference. Son of a ruler.
Yeah. For what it's, I think we all love Mission Impossible Fallout. That is I think some people might actually like 4 or 5 better. Is the consensus amongst this group that 6 is the best one, or no?
Oh, Fallout is for sure. Yeah, everything you
Okay.
just said, John, and more. I
Okay.
totally agree with.
I think I have the original higher. I could be
Really?
wrong. Yeah, there's something really special about the first one.
No,
Like green light.
with the exception of 2, which I still think is pretty good. They're all excellent.
Yeah.
This is my favorite action movie of the last 10 years. It's up there with Mad Max, John Wick, and a couple others. My favorite hyphen movie.
Nice.
It's going back
What do
to
you
the
got?
first Mission Impossible. It's crazy how the stunts that Tom Cruise has done over the years have elevated.
Mhm.
Yet, whenever somebody asks me what is the Mission Impossible stunt you remember the most, it's in that first movie when he's hanging.
Mm-hmm.
That is the number one action scene. So,
What do you
Yeah,
have at
that-
number 1, Andrew?
That movie owned me from the theme remake on. Like, it was just like such a good like I played the snot out of that CD. It's great.
Yeah, the U2 guys did that. Adam Clayton and Bono did the remix of that.
I didn't know that.
Not the first
Yeah.
one. I don't think they did the first
Maybe
one.
that
did
was Mission Impossible 2.
they? Yeah, it could be.
doesn't matter.
It could be
It's
one of
great.
them.
It's great.
Andrew, what's your number 1?
Empire.
Empire
So,
Strikes
yeah.
Back?
Yeah. Empire Strikes Back. So,
Does that
Aaron, what's your
have a
number
hyphen
1?
in it?
Yeah.
I did.
No. Oh no. I don't think it does.
I
And that's why
promise
I
it does.
excluded it. I think
No,
it's
it
just
does not
called-
have a hyphen.
Yeah.
Star Wars.
The official title is just Star Wars : Empire Strikes Back or
I am
Empire
looking on IMDb right now, and I don't know if I can.
Oh, they include the
it's
episode
great.
5 in there?
Yeah, that's not the original title. I don't go by that nonsense. I'll allow it. I'll allow it because IMDb.
If IMDb
Well-
says it will allow it, I don't
Well, then,
think. Who gets to
I go-
decide that? Like, where would you
I
go to
go by-
find the official title of a movie?
I've always used Letterboxd as my official. Like, is it a colon? Is
I've
it a
always
dash?
used IMDb
Yeah.
because it's the internet's movie database. So, regardless, if you want to count it, fine. If not, move Fallout in its place.
No, that's
that's
fine. That's fine. Empire's
Yeah,
fine.
So, Aaron, what is your number 1?
I love the fact, even though it was a mistake, I love the fact that we all have number 1s that nobody else had on their list.
It is such a weird. And I thought like, how do we not have a consensus on this? There's not a lot of movies that have hyphens.
Guys, I really love Wreck-It Ralph. I think Wreck-It Ralph
That's
is
a good pick. That's a good pick too.
one of the best animated movies ever made. It's so much fun. It handles content IP in such a fun, interesting way. It was really one of the first movies to do it in that way, and I just have so much fun with that movie. Great voice performances, great central duo. Those two hanging out in the game worlds and trying to figure stuff out. I think Sarah Silverman voices
Vanellope.
Vanellope character. It's just so much fun. It's just such a fun movie. I love Wreck-It Ralph, so that's my number 1.
That is a great pick. That would probably be my 6th or 7th on my list. That is rewatching it with my daughter not long ago was so much fun because she's not old enough to have played any video games, but she's like, "Oh, that's Bowser," and I was like, "Yes, it is." I've raised you well.
I almost trolled you guys and told you my number 1 was The Incredibles because it has a dash in it. But that was not the category.
I still
was
have
not the
my
category.
veto for the year. Don't forget. So.
The category was hyphenated movies, not movies with a dash in it. So it doesn't.
That was a good roundup. Did we have any over? Well, we had one Ben-Hur. That was it. 15 picks and only one over.
Which Ben-Hur was my very first honorable mention. So,
any other honorable mentions, Andrew?
Yeah, Punch Drunk Love.
Yep.
Even a bad PTA movie is a good movie.
Mhm.
Last week we were talking about Aronofsky, and I think that Aaron, you said that Aronofsky was an artist. I think that PTA falls in that category
Sure.
as well. He just
I can
makes visually and narratively unique, striking movies.
Yep.
And that's the rest of my.
Did you have any honorable mentions, John?
No, I don't think so. I think all the ones that I had or were considering. Well, one here that I think we haven't mentioned, John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum.
Yeah.
It's probably my third favorite of the John Wick films, but it's still very good.
Yeah.
So I would put that in there for sure.
The only other two I will mention, Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I have a soft spot in my heart for.
Oh, is there a dash between P and Wee?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. At least there was when I checked. Who knows?
I just did a text. I just did a search for hyphen, and then it just pulled up every movie that has one.
Yeah. The other was the Liam Neeson plane movie, Nonstop. I enjoyed.
That movie's so bad.
I think it's pretty good.
I think it's pretty good too.
I would
Harry
never watch
Potter
that
and the
movie
Half-Blood
again.
Prince is also a one to maybe throw in the top 10.
Yep.
One of the better.
All right, let's finish off with some buried treasure, guys. What's that one thing in any area of pop culture that you want to make sure people know about? John, you're our guest, so you go last. I will kick us off. I'm watching Shrinking on Apple TV Plus. This is the show with Harrison Ford and Jason Segel. I always want to say Seagal. Nope. Jason Segel. So
how is it?
It's good. I don't think it's great, but it is really fun, and I think Jason Segel makes it. I think he's the one that's having the most fun here. Is the most interesting, which is good. He's kind of the central character. So I don't think it's Ted Lasso good, but it's a lot of fun. So if you want to check that out on Apple TV Plus, that is Shrinking. What do you got, Andrew?
Oh, you know me. Whenever we're talking about a Marvel movie, the first thing I have to do is talk about a DC franchise. So,
of course,
it's like equal time that we give politicians for some reason.
Exactly.
Right.
I'm going to recommend a graphic novel series called Batman Year 100. Everybody knows Batman Year 1. Batman Year 100 is 100 years in the future after Gotham and the Batman have like parted
So
ways.
this is beyond Batman Beyond?
Yeah.
Whoa.
It's an Elseworld, really. So,
okay.
But like the Batman Beyond thing never happened. So now there's this caped vigilante going around trying to solve a case. And what I love about this graphic novel is it's an easy one and done. They introduce this new mysterious character, and he's right in an investigation. It doesn't do any world building around him. It's because it's Gotham. We know what's going to be happening. No Joker, no supervillains, anything like that, or making a return. It's like the reference, like, yeah, we remember when this all happened in the past. And what this new guy does differently is he's more about psychological terror as opposed to like gadgets and stuff. Like he puts in like fake like fang teeth to scare people, and it's a really unique, fun, interesting way to do the Batman character. So definitely check it out.
Nice.
I love the idea of like alternate futures and projecting, where certain characters will be in the far off future. Yeah. That sounds like a really cool story.
Yeah.
Right on.
John, what do you
got? Speaking of alternate futures, my buried treasure is one I feel like you maybe have spoken about on the show, Aaron. For All Mankind. It's a TV show on Apple TV Plus. It premiered 3 years ago in 2019. It is an alternate version of American history in regards to the space race. And the very first episode is like, what if the Soviets landed on the moon before Neil Armstrong? And then that is our diverging point from our history, what happens next? If the space race continued into the 70s and 80s and we didn't just give up and we kept going back to the moon, what if we built a moon base? What if we decided to try to go to Mars before 2030 and we tried it in 1990? It's actually, that's a really interesting backdrop, like an alternate history of NASA. And what if we actually stayed in it and gave it a budget? But the movie primarily is an ensemble drama with like the astronaut wives and the men and all their interpersonal relations and their drama and their own personal demons and issues against the backdrop of like a slightly more advanced 1970s America. And there's some really cool stuff going on here. I love the science. I love the competency porn aspects of it. and then just these individual characters and like seeing how they navigate this version of America is super interesting. So the writing's really strong, and they're good, quick seasons. I think they're like 8 or 9 episodes each. I'm already halfway through season 2. It's been a good binge this month.
Nice. I don't think I talked about that because I only watched like the first episode and didn't find it compelling enough to go back to.
Oh, that's too bad.
Since then, I have heard it gets really, really good, and it is on my list of TV shows to go back to. So
I've been really enjoying it. They're doing some things that are really interesting, and then I'm also just finding myself invested in all of the characters. Even when it's just like sort of an Earthbound episode, it's like I actually just kind of want to find out what happens to this guy this episode. And
very nice.
I appreciate that.
Apple's loving their interstellar type shows now. They got this. They have the Foundation.
Yeah, they have some good. I feel like Apple TV is very quietly crushing narrative media. Yeah, didn't Apple TV? Didn't they do Coda last year? The Best Picture winner, wasn't that theirs?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, Netflix doesn't have an Oscar. Not a Best Picture one anyway.
Nope.
Apple TV does though.
Yep, sure does.
That's something.
That is For All Mankind on Apple TV Plus. Batman Year 100 is a graphic novel, and Shrinking also on Apple TV Plus. Speaking of them, well, we did it, guys. We managed to do a podcast. Congratulations. We managed to embiggen this podcast. Make it
it's an Ant-Man joke.
Hey, Ant-Man joke. Very nicely done. Thank you so much for joining us today for Sif Pop. It is part of the Studio DNA Podcast Network. You can find out more about other shows on the network at studiodna.media or by searching Studio DNA in your podcast player. Huge thanks to Andrew for hanging out again today.
Thank you, buddy.
Big thanks to producer Phil for producing the audio and video show.
Thanks, Phil.
Thanks to John Paula for coming and hanging out. John, where do you want to send people to check out your stuff?
As always, taking a very long break from YouTube. So you can find me at letterboxd.com/John Paula, JONPAULA. I try to review something every week. And this week I wrote 600 words on why Ant-Man is the worst film in the MCU. So
nice.
And I also reviewed the other 2 Ant-Man if you want to go back and see how I thought about the rest of the trilogy.
All the Ant-Mans. All of them.
Yeah, right.
Much love and gratitude to our Sif Pop members as well for giving monthly to make Sif Pop a real thing. Support starts at $3 a month, and you can check out all the information at patreon.com/SifPop. Lots of ways to connect with us. Feel free to leave a comment, a rating, or a review at Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen. You can also email us, feedback@sifpop.com. And finally, if you're having a good time, your movie-loving friends will probably like the show too. So make sure you let them know about it and that listening is much easier than remembering the lyrics to that one song, Midnight in Paris. We will be back next week with Cocaine Bear and more.
Yes.
So we will see you then.
Have fun with that.
Best friends in Paris?
Yeah, something like that. I don't remember what it is. All right. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us live. Nice to see you all. Lolly, great to see you. Thomas, Scott.
Hi, Scott.
Mark, Stuart. We're gonna run because we still have a little bit of spoilage to record.
Right. Yeah.
So we will catch you on the next one, guys. Bye.
Bye.